The protagonist Cyan Vert recalls his father's advice to live for the clan during a battlefield. His father emphasized staying by his brother's side without desire. Amidst the chaos, wounded and surrounded by fallen knights, Cyan confronts an enemy commander named Boris. Cyan's mysterious power associated with the organization Mist unnerves Boris. Boris, mocking Cyan's abilities, warns of a 9-star magic barrier. Determined, Cyan vows to break through. However, a commanding figure in golden armor intervenes, leaving Cyan surprised. Remembering his father's words about living for the clan and supporting his brother Ashel, Cyan faces an uncertain fate on the battlefield. In the golden armored figure's blonde gaze, Cyan realizes Ashel is the true mastermind, leaving him emotionally shaken. Ashel claims he aimed to lighten Cyan's burdens, praising his past contributions, but Cyan senses an impending confrontation. Confused, Cyan questions Ashel's action, unaware of any wrongdoing. Ashel condemns Cyan's ominous fog as that of a murderer doubting his humanity. Accusing Cyan of deception, Ashel questions if he comprehends his sins, fueling Cyan's fury. Recalling years of loyalty, Cyan feels betrayed as Ashel disowns him. Furious, his dark aura intensifies, and he rises, resolving to confront Ashel. The crimson mist shocks onlookers, Cyan condemning Ashel's attempt to kill him out of fear, challenging his morality. Propelled by rage, Cyan attacks relentlessly, aiming to exploit Ashel's weakness. Unexpectedly, Boris aids with a magic barrier, and Ashel, labeling Cyan a demon, inflicts a fatal wound, claiming a painless death. Bleeding, Cyan reflects on Betrayal, comparing it to a moment in solo leveling. In a near-death stupor, he contemplates past foolishness, attempting a final attack interrupted by a powerful force. Regaining consciousness, Cyan hears young Master Cyan waking in his childhood room 20 years later. Emily scolds him, urging preparation for Vert clan Dai training, leaving young Cyan perplexed. 27 years back in 985 March, a crucial duel unfolded between Cyan and half-brother Cran. Born to the Duke and Margaret, Cran received attention, leaving Cyan mocked. Emily suggested surrender, but Cyan, riven to win, interpreted it as condescend. Cyan, unsure if a dream, memory, or illusion, he contemplated traveling back in time. As the duel commenced, confident, Cran attacked. Cyan, perceiving slow movements, dodged and disarmed him, triggering Cran's frustration. Despite a chance to end it, Cyan hesitated, recalling past bullying. In the aftermath, he resolved to assert himself, surprising the Duke, leading and to contemplate the true significance of his victory. Escorted by high-class knight Yulin, Cyan encountered Margaret in the hallway. The Duke had freed up his schedule, sparking questions about Cyan's accomplishment. Margaret, visibly upset, accused Cyan of audacity, criticizing him for beating his brother. She asserted that duels had consequences, hinting that bastards shouldn't be treated as legitimate children. Margaret's insult prompted Cyan's devilish grin, considering drastic measures but choosing a different path. With a menacing smile, Cyan mentioned attending the academy with Cran, hinting at potential harm to her son. Enraged, Margaret attempted to slap Cyan, but Yulin intervened, apologizing and explaining the Duke's urgent summons. Despite the Duchess's anger, Yulin escorted Cyan, emphasizing the Duke's orders. Cyan found amusement in being protected by a knight who wouldn't yield even to the Duke's wife, considering Yulin both nice and reliable. The door opened and Cyan entered the room, greeting Duke Willius Ver. In Cyan's mind, he reflected on the Duke's significant role as the guardian of the continent, known for halting demon with remarkable magic power and wisdom. Despite the world's perception, Cyan's memories framed the Duke as a man who willingly devoted his life to serving others. The Duke, noticing Cyan's skill in swordsmanship during the duel, questioned when Cyan had learned such techniques. Cyan admitted to practicing nightly on his own, surprising the Duke. Despite Cyan's claim of hiding his skills to avoid attention, the Duke pressed for the real reason, especially considering Cyan's intense actions during the duel. The Duke questioned Cyan's decision to kick Cray while he was down, seeking the motivation behind the unnecessary act. Cyan, perceptive of the Duke's intentions, wondered if the Duke was testing his capabilities. Admitting that he wanted to prove himself, Cyan confidently stated that he aimed to demonstrate superiority over Cran despite their shared blood. The Duke, impressed with Cyan's clear and concise answer, praised his level-headedness and predicted a future where Cyan becomes a great and reliable support for Ashel. Cyan grappled with feelings of betrayal from his past life, questioning why he would willingly become Ashel's helper again. He perceived the Duke's continued obsession with Ashel and clenched his fists in frustration. The Duke, expressing a desire to reward Cyan, encouraged him to voice any wishes. With sharp determination, Cyan decided to dismantle everything Ashel aimed to achieve, revealing his intentions to the Duke. Moments later, Emily turned pale upon learning that Cyan wanted to enter the battlefront. Cyan reassured her, explaining that nothing was certain yet. Emily expressed concern, questioning Cyan's sanity and emphasizing the dangers of the battlefront, known for swarming with wicked demonic beasts. To meet the Duke's condition for entering the Lima Valley within a month, Cyan aimed to elevate his physical strength. Despite acknowledging his current weakness compared to his peers, Cyan recognized the value of his combat sense and the limited magic within him. Resolving to train immediately, he embraced the opportunity to make the most of his capabilities. Suddenly, Alice, a stern woman with blue hair, burst into the room, gripping Cyan by the collar. Emily greeted Lady Alice, who questioned Cyan's sanity, having heard about his request to go to the battlefront. After releasing him, Alice demanded Cyan to go to the rooftop, stating that defeating Cray had gotten into his head. On the rooftop, Alice challenged Cyan to a duel, offering him passage to the battlefront if he endured her attacks for 3 minutes. Despite Cyan's reluctance, Alice insisted on an answer to her question about the family title. Surprised by Cyan's disinterest, she assumed his silence meant a yes and urged him to draw his sword. Though weary from a recent duel, Cyan reluctantly faced Alice's relentless attacks, impressing her with unexpected skill. Cyan, questioning his sister's intent, successfully blocked her assaults. Despite the challenge of facing his older sister, Alice acknowledged Cyan's intuition and intensified her attacks. In a surprising turn, Cyan blocked Alice's sword and positioned his rapier at her throat, but she countered, sending him flying onto a pillar. Reflecting on his situation, Cyan admitted to compensating for his lack of strength with mana nearing his limit. Alice, also fatigued, summoned elemental magic for the Aqua Blade, a powerful 6-star magic. Cyan, realizing the danger, charged at her, hoping for help. Alice exuded immense power, and in Cyan's mind he hoped for Yulin's intervention. At the critical moment when Alice and Cyan were on the brink of collision, Yulin appeared, shouting for them to stop. He blocked Alice's sword with his own while gripping Cyan at the back of his neck. The clash resulted in a powerful explosion, prompting Yulin to scold Lady Alice for being harsh on a younger opponent. Dangling from Yulin's grasp, Cyan sighed in relief, wondering when Yulin would appear. Alice, snapping out of a momentary trance, hugged her brother tightly, apologizing for her actions and shedding tears. Cyan smiled, acknowledging Alice's persistent nature. Alice, hailed as God's child for her exceptional skills and beauty, had a promising future as a continent guardian until an unfortunate incident in the Knights of Light. Cyan, embracing his sister, vowed to protect her this time. Alice turned her attention to Yulin, questioning if he was the Duke's guardian knight. Confused about the Duke's departure for war, Yulin revealed his mission to protect Cyan on the Duke's orders, carried out in secrecy. Cyan, sensing Yulin's presence since leaving the Duke's office, pondered his father's decision to have Yulin follow him discreetly. Suddenly, Cyan felt groggy, and Alice caught him as he drifted into sleep. She smiled teasingly, commenting on his childish nature. The next day, Alice returned to the academy. She had come back just for a bit to see their father before her graduation. Cyan felt the need to become stronger, so he had been focusing on strength training for the past 2 weeks. But 10 push-ups are his limit. He felt like he hit a wall for the past 2 weeks. Back then, he was pretty confident in his strength. He knew this time he needed a solution. Emily knocked on his door to inform him that a package from her had arrived. Cyan got excited. Emily brought it out and complained about how it smelled so disgusting. It's hellhound's blood that he asked her to get for him, a rare item that can only be found in Lamia Valley. But now he figured out that the rumors that it was in the black market were true. The blood of demonic beasts is considered poisonous because of its sickening smell, as well as the feeling of burning upon consumption. But it actually permanently increases the mana and strength of the person who consumes it. Most people think that it was a false rumor, but Cyan knew that it's true based on his past life experience. Emily asked him if he's really going to drink it. He answered yes in his mind. Emily has nothing to worry about since he's the only person who is able to adapt to her cooking skills. He chugged it down. He was reminded of the first time he remembered. It was mushroom soup, and after a single bite, his heart stopped for a moment. Compared to that soup, the blood is nothing. He finished everything and commented that it was good. The power is oozing from his body. He told Emily that he's going out for a walk. He wanted to see if it worked. Our MC stepped outside. He arrived at a mountain overlooking the city. It had been a while since he last came there. He had been waiting for it for the last 2 weeks. It was the time when Yulin was not there for his regular reports. He usually visits the place when he wants to be alone. One day, Ashel received a divine revelation from the god of light, Lumel. It said that an ancient temple is hidden somewhere in the mountains. He didn't fully believe it, but there was a place where the flow of mana was concentrated. And of course, the divine revelation is yet to come. Only Cyan knew about it. At the moment, he touched the ground with his hand, and his power traveled in the area. He grinned as he thought about how Ashel had no idea what he's doing right now. The ground was shattered, and it revealed an underground passage. He decided to go inside. He noticed that it was different from the last time he was there. That place was an ancient temple that served the god of light, Lumel, until all of the history on that land was erased. It was because of the god of demon war that happened 300 years ago. Who could have ever imagined that the place existed in the mountains just behind the castle? Ahead of him is a glowing sword on a pedestal. It is considered the owner of the temple. In August 12, 999, humanity triumphs over the Demon King's army in Vas, driven out by the discovery of ancient relics, God's weaponry. The Holy Sword, Durin Dayar, blessed by Lumel, the god of light, plays a crucial role in humanity's victory. Cyan foresees his demise at the hands of Cyan Vert, who will wield the sword. Speculating on Durin Dayar's connection to his regression, he touches it, frustrated by its lack of response. Mocking the holy sword, he decides to attend to other matters. Unbeknownst to him, the sword is annoyed. Walking past the light, Cyan detects an otherworldly shadow resembling a sword but not its actual shadow. Illuminating the hidden pathway, he finds a room with his sword glowing red on a pedestal. Greeting his sword, demonic sword Chiram, he senses a powerful ominous aura but no response. Despite this, Cyan is elated, feeling the familiar connection. A shadow with sharp eyes questions Cyan's fear, hinting at the sword's ownership. As it rushes toward him, Cyan nonchalantly chokes the shadow, surprising Chiram. Cyan disputed his perceived worthiness as the shadow faded, revealing a human face. Chiram, surprised by Cyan's touch, questioned the interaction. Cyan asserted ownership of the sword but lost his grip as Chiram leapt back, revealing herself as a woman. Inquiring about Cyan's identity and sensing a dark aura, she asked if he was the successor and sensed a Sara. Confirming his identity, Cyan demanded her to bow down, sparking a conflict. Realizing words weren't enough, Cyan activated demonic sword control, overpowering Chiram. Despite planning to go easy, Cyan continued the assault, asking why she resisted. After repeated attacks, Chiram reluctantly accepted Cyan as her master. With his business concluded, Cyan contemplated returning. Chiram, in sword form, expressed the joy of breathing fresh air and transformed into a humanoid figure. Curious about her master's name, Cyan revealed it, surprising Chiram. Learning that Eru chose him in a past life, Chiram was perplexed. Cyan revealed his past death to Chiram, who was bewildered. They stood before another sword, and Chiram noticed it was still dormant. Cyan casually mentioned it would wait for its owner for 20 years, prompting Chiram to question how he knew the future. Grabbing his sword, Cyan, with a devilish grin, unexpectedly cut the handle of the nearby sword, sparking Chiram's surprise. Curious about his intentions, she inquired about his plan. Cyan, wearing a shield on his chest, reflected on the swift passage of time as the carriage moved away from the castle at sunset. The carriage stopped, and Cyan, greeting the Duke, recalled that it was the day he had anticipated. The Duke questioned Cyan's determination to head to the battlefront, offering an opportunity to back out. Confidently, Cyan affirmed his commitment, stating his heart belonged to the battlefront. The Duke instructed Yulin to open a magic scroll, summoning a hellhound, a low-rank demonic beast from the Lamia Valley. Cyan recognized the effort put into the test and acknowledged his father and the knight's hard work. The knights placed their hands on the sword. Cyan observed and thought about how the knights were prepared to step in when it became dangerous. The Duke told him that he was responsible for his actions. The Duke urged him to prove how strong his resolve was by passing the trial and showing it to them. Yulin pondered the impending trial, tightening his sword grip, recalling when Cyan, with 3 days left to fulfill his promise to his father, invited him to a duel. Realizing he needed genuine combat experience, Cyan sought Yulin's help. Yulin, initially hesitant, suggested a duel with someone of Cyan's age, like young Master CR, who had been avoiding Cyan. Agreeing to the duel, Yulin committed to defensive tactics, urging Cyan to attack freely. Cyan, grateful, asked another favor, silence about the duel with the Duke. Yulin, puzzled, accepted. The duel began, with Yulin defending against Cyan's attacks. Yulin, recognizing Cyan's growth, admitted defeat, thanking him. Yulin, impressed, acknowledged Cyan's development. In the present, Yulin realized his hunch about Cyan's trial success was correct. The hellhound approached swiftly, and Cyan prepared for its attack. The creature roared, fixated on Cyan, passing him, who acknowledged his current limitations against such monsters. Cyan planned a decisive strike, assuming a combat stance. As the hellhound charged, Cyan leapt, piercing its skull with his sword. The knights, astonished, pleased the Duke. Cyan surveyed the hellhound's bleeding corpse, deeming it a waste. Suppressing his impulses, he refrained from unconventional actions to avoid appearing crazy. The Duke applauded Cyan's impressive feat, inviting him to the battlefront, which Cyan acknowledged with gratitude. Hiram, a demonic sword on Cyan's shoulder, protested fiercely, questioning if she looked like a kitchen knife. Cyan calmly affirmed her identity as a demonic sword. Hiram insisted on being used and pleaded for blood to strengthen her. Cyan assured her, revealing his intent to unleash her power soon. Hiram lamented that he should have awakened her earlier. An ogre appeared in the northwest, prompting the Duke to order a defensive line and the ogre's immediate elimination. The restraint of salvation commenced, immobilizing the ogres with a magic circle. The Duke commanded the knights to attack, while Cyan, mounted on a horse with Emily behind him, observed. Emily, terrified, questioned Cyan's choice to be in such a perilous place. Cyan, feeling nostalgic, conversed with the Duke about the front lines. Cyan admitted to being nervous, and the Duke cautioned against letting his guard down in such unpredictable situations. Cyan acknowledged the constant battles, each with a detailed response manual and capable knights handling monster threats. The base camp, the safest area, posed challenges for feeding Hiram. He wondered if he had to wait until dinner time. He noticed Emily trembling under the blanket. She replied, "Didn't the Duke tell us?" She continued, "We know when and where we would die." Cyan asked why. She packed up and returned, yelling loudly, "Do you think I can? When you can't even do anything without me." With a slight hint of annoyance, she told him that with monsters all over the place, if she ran away, who would take care of him? She instructed him to move since it's already time to eat. Cyan asked her about the cape that he requested, but Emily just left him in the tent without saying a word. Cyan was holding back his annoyance, but he wondered what would happen if he just chased her away. He couldn't believe that's how she treated her master. Later that night, Cyan laid a doll that looked like him in bed, covering it in a blanket to make it look like he was sleeping. He thought that was enough to fool Emily. She asked him if he plans to exercise even in that place. He answered yes and asked if he woke her up. Her eyes were still closed as she praised him for being diligent. She added that the Duke would be proud of him if he were to find out. He put on his hood and told her that he will be leaving, asking her to take care of things as usual. As he was about to leave the tent, he briefed her that he was asleep. Cyan knew that since they are in the front lines, the guard duties are strengthened. He ran as fast as he could. If he didn't take that chance, moving around freely would be difficult. He used his skill Thick Fog 3 move Fog's Descent. Relying on his memory, he went to a place with tons of monsters. It was the perfect place to use Cyan. Excited by the scent of blood, Hiram urged Cyan to move quickly as hellhounds attacked. Cyan agreed, promising to indulge her. Enjoying the bloodbath, Cyan and Hiram effortlessly cut down monsters. Activating Fog Sword Rushing Fogstorm, Cyan swiftly eliminated several like a tornado. Afterward, Cyan, seemingly mad, used a tube to drain fresh blood from a monster into a mug. Hiram, elated, felt refreshed. Cyan committed to ongoing training, and Hiram inquired about their progress. Unbeknownst to them, hellhounds gathered behind. Sensing the monsters, Cyan reassured Hiram due to the young knight and an abundance of creatures. That same night, a carriage escorted by several knights is traveling in the mountains. A girl with silver hair is inside the carriage. Someone can be heard saying that the front line is too dangerous. The woman inside the carriage with the girl suggested that they go back. The girl told her not to treat her like a child. She's the royal princess of the empire. With a hint of annoyance, she asked her how many times must she remind her that she's bound to her duty to assist her father in his tours. She warned her that she will get mad if he mentions it again. The woman replied that she understood and then changed the topic with the news, saying that the youngest son of the Vert family is on the front lines. She added that he should be around the same age as her. The princess was surprised to hear that Duke Vert brought his youngest son. Her attendant told her that the Duke wasn't really planning to bring the kid, yet the kid volunteered himself since they are at the same age. The attendant suggested that the princess and the kid should get along. The princess acted as if this didn't interest her. She ended the conversation by saying that she would go to sleep. The attendant respected her wish. After a few heartbeats, the princess asked for the kid's name. The attendant replied that it's Cyan Vert. She repeated the name and took a mental note of it. The face of the princess was then revealed. Father asks from Cyan, "How are you adjusting on the front line?" With respect, he replied that he is learning something new every day. The Duke is surprised and asks him if that's so. Duke thought he would want to hurry back, and he endured for quite some time. Duke appreciates Cyan, and Cyan is shocked at his father's kind behavior. Vilayarth asks his men to check if anyone is injured, and finds out that no one is. Vilayarth then orders for them to hurry back. Vilayarth then asks the young boy, Cyan, how his life is going on the front lines, to which Cyan mentions that he is learning new things every day. Vilayarth, who is also Cyan's father, mentions that he thought his son would want to hurry back. But to his surprise, Cyan seems very determined, and thus Vilayarth is very proud of him. Meanwhile, Cyan is left questioning to see his father being so nice after a long time. Shortly after, a death worm emerges from underground, making Cyan vigilant. He quickly pulls out his blade to fight it off. However, even after inflicting some injuries, nothing seems to be bothering the death worm. Turns out that the death worm can very quickly regenerate any shallow injuries on its body, and soon Karam mentions that it is of no use to keep attacking the death worm, a comment on which Cyan also agrees. It has already been a month since Cyan has come to the front lines. He has drunk the blood of countless demonic beasts, but he feels that it wasn't enough. Cyan realizes that he has no choice and decides to act exactly how Karam wants to. He uses Thick Fog 9th form demonic sword manifestation to rip the death worm's thick skin. Cyan then proceeds to use Fog Sword 8 fluttering petals to eliminate the death worm, and he succeeds in doing so as well. On the other hand, Vilayarth and his army come across a dead demonic beast who looks like it hasn't been long since he was killed. They believe that a demon was involved in its killing, and so Vilayarth asks his men to inspect the area and burn the corpse. Soon, another subordinate of Vilayarth grabs his attention and asks him to come and see what he has found. The subordinate then takes Vilayarth to the corpse of the death worm, leading Vilayarth to wonder if it is the organization that has been doing all these killings. We then discover more about the demonic sword manifestation. It lets Karam take over Cyan's body so that she can use her true powers. But she can completely take over Cyan if he lets his guard down, which is why Cyan thinks that using Karam to take down just one monster is insane. Cyan then wakes up and realizes that his entire body is sore, but he also finds solace in the fact that he drank all the demonic beast blood. On the other hand, Karam comments that she gets it now and mentions to Cyan that it is his outer appearance that is of a kid. But he isn't a kid at all by how he acts or talks. Karam then begins commenting on what she thinks about Cyan and mentions that he must be a regressor. But this is something that Cyan has already made obvious to her. Karam then warns Cyan that if he is to falter or lose, then she will swallow him up. The very next day, Cyan gets approached by Emily, who has come to inform him that they have found a high-level demonic monster's corpse after a very long time. She emphasizes how it has been very long since they last sighted a monster like this. Thereupon, the subordinate arrives and informs Cyan that Vilayarth wants to see him. Cyan then makes his way to Vilayarth's chamber, greets him and is frightened at the same time as he cannot think of any excuse. Vilayarth then asks Cyan to take a seat, leaving Cyan in a state of fear while he thinks of ways to get out of this situation. Vilayarth decides to abruptly ask Cyan as to what he was doing last night. In response, Cyan mentions that he went to bed early as he was too tired. This response appears to have created doubts in Vilayarth, as he is now not sure if he was overthinking or he did see Cyan's sword marks on the demonic beasts. Cyan then asks Vilayarth the reason for asking such a question, to which Vilayarth inquires to Cyan if he has heard about what happened near the camp last night. Vilayarth then reveals that they are going to look into more, but so far it seems as if the slain demons were left by an organization called Mist, which is an organization that has existed since ancient times. Vilayarth then thinks that Cyan would have nothing to do with such an organization, so he proceeds to get this suspicion out of his mind. Vilayarth then asks Cyan if he is aware of who is coming to visit, to which Cyan comments that it is the Majesty that's visiting, but he wasn't aware that he would be visiting that day. Thereafter, Vilayarth asks for a favor from Cyan. The scene then shifts to the arrival of the Majesty, who is then formally greeted by Vilayarth. The Majesty reminds Vilayarth that they are old friends, so he doesn't have to be so formal with him. The Majesty is then greeted by Cyan, and he realizes that this is the child that everyone has been talking about. The Majesty finds it really impressive for a boy like Cyan to be living in such a rough environment, and soon mentions to Vilayarth that his children are definitely different from the ordinary ones. Cyan then understands that Vilayarth just wants him to appeal as his son. Meanwhile, the Majesty soon introduces the 5th princess of the Ushif Empire, Erin Severus. Cyan then recalls that Vilayarth wanted him to escort Erin for the day while just keeping her company. The name sounds familiar to Cyan, and he immediately recalls seeing Erin in the academy in his past life. He saw Eren like a few times in between classes, and Cyan does not seem to be willing to do this, but he understands his father's intentions and realizes that he just wants Cyan to develop the same relationship with Eren as Villiarth has with the Majesty. However, Cyan believes that Villiarth has chosen the wrong person for him, as Eren cannot become his friend and finds it very annoying that he has to be obedient for now. Soon, he takes Eren to look around where she questions about the Red River, which is also called the Blood River. Cyan then begins explaining why it is called the Blood River, since the demons wash up their fluids in that river. Eren then questions as to what is at the end of the river, and she discovers that at the end of the river lies the demonic realm from where all the demonic beasts arrive. Eren then sees a bright yellow light in the sky and questions Cyan about it. In response, Cyan reveals that the light is the 3rd sentry post in the west, and also reveals that the yellow light signifies that the demonic beasts are incoming. Villiarth then asks his men to get ready to fight and asks the Majesty to take shelter, but he expresses his wish to fight as well. On the other hand, Cyan prepares to leave to fight as well, and is asked by Eren to let her tag along with him. This leads Cyan to explain to Eren that she will jeopardize the lives of dozens of soldiers just with her presence, as quick decisions are needed to be made in the battlefield. Cyan then questions Eren if she is prepared to bear the loss of this many lives, leading her to start crying. In no time, the battle begins, and Villiarth orders his men to protect the Majesty and to slay all the demonic beasts without sparing any single one of them. I hope you're enjoying what you've seen so far. If you found value in today's content and want to be part of our growing community, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means the world to us, and it's what keeps this channel alive and kicking. Plus, don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss out on any of the exciting stuff we have in our channel. Take care.